Hey, May from unBasic Black. Today I'm going to talk about critical race theory.
Hello, friends. Angel with unBasic Black here, and today we are talking about critical race theory.
So you just take a look at these laws and stuff. So critical race theory in schools wants. Here's the thing about school, right? I learned this. My degree is in education. So I learned this as I'm reading and I'm learning the things I need to learn so that I can get my license and all that kind of thing. And I'm seeing this hypocrisy, this two-sided thing. So you have the side that says we want kids to develop their critical thinking skills. We want them to be able to think for themselves. We want them to be able to take care of themselves, blah, 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 so on and so forth, right? But then you get down to the practice of it all. So the book says this. The practice, implementation of it says this. And then, three-sided. So then you have what society says, which is different from all the other things. So we're telling kids you need to think for yourself, and at the same time do what I tell you to do. And at the same time, you don't need to listen to what anybody says because you are free to do, be whoever you are. Not telling the kids that do, be whoever you are comes with consequences, which goes into another group of people who understands this more than others, in addition to us. So critical race theory says what we want to do, critical race theory in schools says what we want to do is we want to expose people as early as possible to this. It's become a controversy of late because some schools are wanting to make it part of their curriculum, and there are people who are getting their panties in a bunch over it because they think that what it is doing is promoting division in America versus all the division that's been promoted in the past inception, let alone the past 4 or 5 years. At any rate, so wanted to talk a little bit about it to put in my 2 cents, because we have opinions. So put in my 2 cents about it, and so what I've learned is the gist of critical race theory says that the ills of America are targeted legally at black people. So, particularly black people. It says people of color, but the emphasis seems to be towards black people / African Americans. The laws, policies, and all of that is set up to keep the black man down. You get that there's that conspiracy theory part that you can see popping up, like, oh, it's not all about the white man trying to keep the black man down. But according to the extensive research that the people who espouse to this theory have done, yes, it is. Beginning back, and they can trace it, and that's the weird part. It's like you don't really think about some things because it's just the way things have always been. But when you start looking at, when you look at the laws that have been passed, the customs that have been started, the culture that has been created, to where you get to last summer and people are like, I didn't know. And we're like, how could you not have known? we've been talking about it for centuries, and it's really been brought to a head since what, the 60s, 50s, 60s, when stuff started being videotaped, like documented on film, that these things are happening. So the critical race theory goes into it's it's evolved a little because it stems from a few other things. Interestingly enough, part of it is stems from like a Marxist slant to it. So for the people on the right, they're like, aha, see, you're communists, you liberals, and all that kind of stuff. However, that aside, you look at what's been done. I took a class. I'm going to deviate just a little bit, but I think it relates. I took a class called Constitutional History. My professor had us read a few books about the how the Constitution was written, who wrote it, and the effects of the laws that have been put in place based on the language of the Constitution of the United States. So I'm reading through these books, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, what? What? I feel like Amber. Amber says, what? Amber says, what? Amber says, what? Amber Ruffin. She's a writer for Seth Meyers. At any rate, so I'm reading through these books, and this is college. So, which is, well, I'll go back. So this is college. I'm reading through the books, and I'm seeing that even right down to when, and it goes further into like Civil War and things like that, because there are amendments to the Constitution. So I'm reading through, and everything is pointing to the premise, like America is based on freedom and democracy and truth, justice in the American way, kind of thing. But according to what I read, and we had to read a lot of books, it was all about money. So then you start thinking about it, like, okay, wait a minute. All right, so let's go with the Boston Tea Party, right? They dump all that tea overboard into the Boston Harbor. Let alone, not even considering like the pollution that has already gotten started in a river that was clean. Excuse me, in a river that was clean. But we're talking about money. They dumped money into the Boston Harbor. Fast forward. Oh, okay, so we get to then the revolution it's all about, because there's a taxation without representation, right? So money, you're taking money from us, money that we don't want you to have anymore. We're not subject to you, so we're going to break away. To which George said, ha ha ha, well, no you won't, because there was money involved. They were going to lose a lot of money because tobacco and then cotton was coming along. So all of these textiles, and you got the hunters who are trapping like these, and we're not even talking about the havoc that it wreaked on, let alone people, but the animal kingdom and all that kind of stuff. So in it, money. It was all about money.
So I know that a lot of you have probably heard a lot of hoopla in the media recently. In particular, conservatives are jumping up and down, screaming in opposition. But in actuality, critical race theory has been around a while. I think that the conservatives are more so, because of everything that's happened recently and because of all the protests that occurred last year, and more people are starting to wake up to the disparities and to the things that a lot of Black people have been saying for decades. I think people now are starting to wake up more to the things that are still occurring, because it surprised me a little bit that younger generations kind of thought, well, slavery's over, so, isn't everybody equal now? But the problem with that line of thinking is that they don't account for some of their own biases. They don't account for some of their own microaggressions or hidden racism that they may harbor. Now, that's not to say that all white people are racist. We know obviously that that's not the case, and we know that racism goes much deeper than that. But
then you fast forward to the Civil War, and black people reap some benefits from it, which critical race theory does not deny. But it wasn't about us, according to what I read. It wasn't about us. It was about money. If the South seceded, cotton was going with the South. That was a lot of money. And the power behind all of that was going to go, which was going to cost money. So how do you hurt somebody? You hurt them through their pocketbook. The best way to hurt somebody is in the green. You mess with their green, they may act right? So, and anyway, start to go. So you get my point. So it was all about money. The South wanted to secede. The executive branch said, heck no, you're not doing it. They said, oh yes, we are. And he said, all right, then I'm just going to free the slaves. Who's going to pick your cotton? Industry is going to grind to a halt. You can't go anywhere now. You ain't got no money. So all of that, going back to critical race theory, in addition to money, laws enacted to keep people in their place. So it's not just talking about black people too. So it talks about the poor, the marginalized, the disadvantaged, how the laws are enacted to make sure that even though we tout ourselves as a land of equality and stuff, the ideal is there, but the implementation is not. And it's evident, especially more and more, that we're seeing, and as people start really like looking at things, like, this is not set up to benefit me. Why is this law 750,000 pages long when all you need to say is equal rights? Just saying. So they're saying that throughout the history of America, the laws have been in place to make sure that certain people do not get above their station. And you can check things out, and then you can see like the patterns of who's affected by these laws, who's affected by the finance laws, who's affected by the housing laws, who's affected by the mortgage lending laws, who's affected by the credit card laws. And that goes into a whole bunch of other stuff too. But who's mostly affected negatively by these laws and policies that have been put in place? And critical race theory says black people. Other people of color as well, but mostly black people. Because for whatever reason, white people, and I've said before, if you don't fall into this category, we're not talking about you. You benefit from it, but we're not talking about you, not talking to you. We're just saying, we're just talking, okay? So,
but with critical race theory, it was very difficult for me to record this video because it seems a bit obvious. It seems like this is a conversation that's long overdue in public schools, in any form of education. I remember when I was younger, I would hear the stories that my parents would tell, and it always fascinated me because I didn't see a lot of that, because I was fortunate enough to grow up in a bubble, in an environment where we didn't really see a lot of the differences in terms of race because it was literally a melting pot and we were all kind of in the same situation. So we didn't really have exposure to a lot of racism. I didn't wake up to racism until I really became an adult. And I remember, my mom talking about it, my grandmother talking about it, my uncle talking about it, about how things are, not how they were, but how things are. And that was where I got a lot of my education from. And they said to me, don't be surprised when you get to college, when you get to uni, and you'll start learning real history. And I was like, well, what the heck? I've been, cramming in SATs and, what the heck I've been doing all these 4 years of high school, right? But then when I got to college and I took African American humanities, and it was like, right? And not just taking that college course, but also the experience that I had the moment I stepped foot in the continental United States. All of the stories that I had heard became a firsthand reality, and I got a very rude awakening to racism. I think it would be great to spare other children this if we teach them not about racism, because I think that's where the misconception lies, because a lot of people, including these conservatives that are kicking and screaming and jumping up and down, they don't really know what critical race theory is. I think May did a very good job explaining it, but I think a lot of people have a misconception as to what critical race theory is.
Because now remember also, school is supposed to be a place of learning where you get to learn multiple sides of an issue, and then you can come to a conclusion on your own, because you're teaching critical thinking skills. You're teaching people, like, this is how you think, and the way you can come to a well-informed decision is by looking at different sides of the coin and then say, okay, I see that, and this is how I'm going to feel about this particular issue, this particular cause, this particular line of thinking, which is why you have all of these different. Anyway, I'm sorry. It's a lot going on because there's so much that's in this critical race theory. So they want this to go into the schools, and it's already kind of been in some schools, but there's a pushback on it because certain people think that what we're trying, I haven't even done half that much research on any of the stuff that they're talking that the critical race theory presents. But the fear is that there'll be a bigger, the said fear, the literal fear, meaning like what is literally said, not what's behind what people say, just the actual, what they're saying, is that it will create a bigger divide in America than what's already here. But critical race theory says if we talk about these things, then we can understand why the divide is here, and then we can make some decisions on how to reduce the divide or get rid of the divide altogether. But that means hurting people's feelings when you start bringing up that kind of past. So you have those people like, let the past stay buried. Well, I would if what happened in the past didn't affect what's going on right now. So in order for us to understand why there are institutions, which critical race theory it covers a lot. Why police have too much power. Why mortgage lenders only lend to certain groups of people the money that they need to get what they want or what they need. Why it's a list. It's a list of the things that we're talking about that's being discussed in Congress and shot down in Congress. It's all of that is connected. So conspiracy theory says, "Oh, you just don't want me to know." Which then goes back to why black people couldn't read. Now I'm really saying it right. So why black people weren't allowed to learn how to read, because if they learned how to read, then they would know what their rights should be. They would know that, oh, if I can read, that means I can think. And if I can think, that means I can postulate. And if I can postulate, that means I need to do something about my situation, because I don't really deserve to be here because I think, therefore I am. I am a human being. You don't have the right to treat me this way. You took me from my homeland and told me that I was nothing and beat it into me, literally beat it into me that I'm nothing. But now that I know, now that I've read about the things that are actually happening, and I've learned through the newspaper, through listening to your conversations and putting these things together, reasoning, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not supposed to be my station in life. I'm a human being, therefore I should be treated equally to you, because we are both human beings. If you cut me, do I not bleed the same color red? And in some cases, technically, no, because of diet. Anyway, that's just throwing that in there. Try to lighten it up a little bit. So, particularly, there's a news outlet that likes to bring this up and say that you're just trying to divide the nation. Can't we just move on from the past and heal? And it's hard to do that when these same people tried to overthrow the government. It's coming up on 6 months ago. So it's hard to get past that when you're telling the people who tried to overthrow the government that, oh, you were well within your rights to do that because you were angry about what's happening in Congress, and oh, they really didn't do half the stuff that you're saying that they did, even though it's on video. And now you want to bring up this thing that American laws have been racist from the get-go. Well, yeah, we want to bring that up because the evidence is pointing to it.
Now, she and I both know, and I think a lot of you know, that it's not a theory, right? These are things that actually happen. There are differences in hiring practices. There are differences in home ownership. There are differences in interest rates and so on, education system, neighborhoods, the whole nine, healthcare. There are differences, and it's been proven time and time again. So it's not a theory. But I think a lot of people, like May mentioned, are afraid because of their own guilt. White guilt is very, very real. I think a lot of you, especially if you're a Black person watching this, can remember last year how you started getting phone calls and emails and text messages and Facebooks and Instagrams and everything out of the woodwork, LinkedIn's. Out of the woodwork from people you really don't even communicate with, but because they were trying to dissuade their white guilt, they contacted the Black person they knew. And a lot of times it was like, I haven't really done that to you, have I? Or I haven't really been like this, have I? And I'm like, why the freak you asking me? You should know how you're treating people, because if it wasn't an issue for you, you wouldn't have to ask the question. If somebody came to me and said, are you being a racist against white people? No. I'm speaking facts, right? And I think those facts are what makes people so uncomfortable, because you're talking about a very dark history. You're talking about a very, very negative existence that America has had for a very long time. And it's just the truth of the matter that white people have done some very bad things to people of color, in particular Black people. they done some bad stuff. Now, does the entire white race have to apologize for slavery? Does the entire white race have to apologize for the systematic racism that people of color still experience to this day? No, but they need to take ownership of their own behaviors and microaggressions that still exist today. Because if there was no problem, we wouldn't be having this discussion, right? So I think that when we get into critical race theory and we start talking about what our children need to know, it is imperative that it not just only apply to Black people, because we already know. You're not telling us anything that we don't know. So to teach critical race theory to Black people, I think is an oxymoron. I think it's kind of like a unnecessary thing to do, because we're already getting that education from life. We're already getting that education from our parents. I know people who have sat their little sons down to explain to them how to behave in front of the police. Explain to them, when you grow up and you start driving, these are the things that you should and should not do. And even for myself, talking to my own girls, hey, this is stuff that you guys need to know. This is life education. So when we talk about critical race theory, you're not telling us anything that we don't already know. It's just important that the discussion happens across the board. I think everybody needs to get together, sit down, and talk this thing out. That's the only way we're going to be able to move forward.
So, all of that, how do I feel about critical race theory? I hate that it's a theory, because the evidence is really pointing to it that it should be critical race law and not critical race theory. But because people are refuting it, it's going to be a bit more than likely before it is accepted as, okay, yeah, it was set up that way. All the people who set it up that way, at least from initially, are all dead. And the only thing we have are their writings, that we forget that they're not talking to everybody. They're only talking to a certain group of people, which is probably part of critical race theory too. So, but that's my take. I believe that it should be taught in school to give people a well-rounded sense of, in addition to teaching civics, teaching about the Constitution, teach about the effects of the laws that have been enacted, and who benefits and who doesn't benefit. And why is that such a scary thing to bring up? Why would you think that this would divide us? And this is the double-sided thing about America. America is like, yeah, we're free, but don't do that. You have the right to think, say, believe whatever you want, but don't think, say, and believe that, because now you're infringing on whose rights now? Excuse me. A little stuffy. So all that to say, yeah, I really believe it should be taught in school. As for how young, there I've on a news outlet that I listen to, there are books that are aimed towards children to help them to understand things that are going on now, to break it down in a way so that they understand about equality and racism and stuff like that. And there've always been books kind of like that, but now it's more to the forefront, and it's becoming more prevalent that these books are getting published, which is a good thing. So that because some people don't know how to bring it up, so these books can help people bring up these topics that are super sensitive, particularly for people who really want their children to understand what's going on. And if they come across news through either a highlight or on the radio or something like that, or however it is that the kids come across on YouTube, then they'll know, they'll be able to have an understanding of, the parents will be able to tell them in a way that they can understand, this is what they're talking about, and this is why you shouldn't treat people a certain way. Or I'm sure the other side have their things like, this is why you should treat them this is why you should treat them this way, kind of thing. I think that's all I have to say about that. It's going to be around for a bit, I believe, because as long as there's going to be different skin colors, then this is going to be, and I hate to say it's going to be an issue, but it's going to be an issue until people learn that I'm a human being and I have just as much a right to be on this planet, let alone in America, as anybody else. Oh, well, the one you brought me here, so I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going back to Africa because I don't know anybody in Africa. That's not my home. America's my home, and I'm going to stop there.
I'm never gonna really say move past slavery because it's so ingrained in our culture, it's so ingrained in our country as a whole. But I do think that we can take some significant steps forward in towards the healing process, towards to actually making it a reality that we all are equal and that we all, like freedom, justice, and the pursuit of happiness and all of this business, right? But that's only gonna occur when people start being real and being honest, right? It's not an attack. It's just truth. And I have always said this, and this is a motto that I hold dear to my heart, even starting this YouTube channel. Can't get mad if it's true.
All right, please like, comment, subscribe. Definitely comment, because we want to know. This is a conversation. So we can't keep doing all the talking. We need you to say something so that we can have a dialogue, because that's what's going to get us through any of this stuff. We need to start talking to each other instead of keeping those feelings to ourselves or those thoughts to ourselves. We won't know anything unless you tell us. Just like you won't know anything from us unless we tell you. And then we can figure out a way how we can move on, how we can know about the past, but we can, I don't know that we necessarily have to forgive it, but we can definitely move on from it and take the lessons and then grow together from there. All right. Thanks for watching.
So, that being said, I'm Angel with unBasic Black. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Let us know what you think. What's your take on critical race theory? Do you even know what it is? So let us know. Have a good one.